Okay, recording has started. So again, welcome to today's webinar on connecting your cloud data warehouse with SAP. My name is Christoph Schuler. I'm the General Manager for Theobald Software located in Seattle, Washington. And I will be walking you through today's webinar. I will provide some background information about our company in case you haven't heard of Theobald Software. I will then introduce our solution to connect your SAP data with your cloud data warehouse environment. And I will also provide you with a live demo. So let's get started. Let me first talk a little bit about Theobald Software. Who are we? We've been around for 12 years now, and we have provided in those 12 years connectivity solutions to our customers. Broadly speaking, we provide solutions in mainly two areas. One is in the areas of BI and analytics, but we also have solutions for application and business process integration. So think of maybe a SharePoint or a cloud application that you want to connect to your SAP system. We also have solutions for that type of scenario. We've grown over these 12 years to over 2,000 SAP customers. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But we also have a fairly broad network of partners. These include technology partners like SAP, for instance, like Microsoft, like Amazon, but also resellers, distributors, and consultancies, service providers that help us bring our solutions to customers. And we're represented today in three geographies. We're headquartered in Stuttgart, Germany, where most of our development as well as support and sales employees are located. We also have sales offices in Seattle in the US, as well as Hong Kong to serve the customers in those areas. In the blue shaded areas here on the screen, you see where we have customers. We've sort of grown as a company with the SAP market in Europe, with more and more customers both in the Americas as well as in Asia Pacific. Here are some of our reference customers. You probably find very large and also smaller size SAP customers among our customers. Customers across all industries, manufacturing, automotive, pharmaceutical, government, you name it. And from a more technical point of view, our solutions connect to any SAP system that runs on the traditional NetWeaver ABAP stack. This includes SAP's ERP or ECC product, but also SAP BW, other SAP systems in the business suite like CRM or SRM, and at the same time we don't connect to something like an SAP SuccessFactors, which is a cloud-based solution that SAP has acquired a few years ago, or Concur Travel Management, again another acquisition by SAP that is a cloud-based system which does not run on the more traditional SAP ABAP NetWeaver platform. So let's spend a minute on why customers care about what we're talking about today. Why do customers care about bringing SAP data into their cloud data warehouse? And so there's a need for SAP data in general terms. There's a need for SAP data outside of SAP. And from our experience, what we find in many cases, customers do this for three main reasons or three main use cases. And the first one is for BI and analytics. These are customers that want to bring SAP data into a third-party system, maybe a third-party database or a cloud data warehouse, as we will see today, and then put a BI and analytics solutions on top of that. That could be maybe a Tableau or a Power BI solution or a Click solution. There's definitely many out there on the market. Another use case is around planning and consolidation. So again, here SAP data is very critical to customers, but maybe they use a third-party planning and consolidation tool, and maybe they also have data in non-SAP systems that is important for planning and consolidation. And then the third one is around application and process integration. So here you might have a workflow where an employee requests something like some time off or a trip, a travel request, or a purchase, for instance. Maybe that needs to get routed to a manager who then has to approve the purchase process or the travel process. And so that might take place in a portal type environment like SharePoint. It might take place in a custom application. And so these applications, these solutions also need to integrate with SAP because SAP still is the system of record. This is where your financial information, your employee information is stored. So those are some typical use cases we see. And what customers have done in the past is they oftentimes hired one or more ABAP developers to create this type of integration, to create an extraction process that brings data outside of SAP, or to create a program or what are called in SAP terms function modules that allows a third party to integrate with the system. The disadvantage of that is that this process is really hard to maintain. It's also quite expensive to hire one or more ABAP developers, and it's really cumbersome to do. So customers are looking for better ways to do this type of integration. And again, from our experience, customers are looking for a process that needs to meet certain criteria. And here are some of the main criteria that we come across frequently. The first one, the integration process or solution has to work across SAP modules. When you think about the different modules and business areas that SAP supports, whether it's finance, human resources, procurement, sales, warehousing, manufacturing, and many, many more, customers want something that works across those modules. And in many cases, data is modeled and stored differently in the various areas of SAP. So that's a big functional requirement that an integration tool must come with. But it also must be reliable and performant and scale to millions of records, right? Especially in the first use case around BI and analytics, that's very important. There's a lot of data in customers' SAP systems, millions of records. So customers want to be able to access that in a reasonable amount of time. The process has to be secure, also auditable, ideally supported by SAP or certified by SAP. But it also has to be cost effective. If you've investigated solutions in this area, you probably found several. There's definitely a few on the market, but some are quite expensive and also come with a certain amount of complexity to implement, to learn, maybe even to develop if it requires coding. And customers today are looking for results in shorter time frames, ideally in days, because they don't want to engage in months-long consulting projects. So with that, let me introduce to you Xtract Universal. Xtract Universal is our product to bring data outside of SAP into your third-party data warehouse. And specifically, what we're talking about today is using that SAP data in a cloud data warehouse environment. And we have more and more customers that are interested in that because they consolidate data, they store data in the cloud and then use it and distribute it from there. So for most customers, it starts with their SAP landscape. And I've listed some of the more common environments that customers have. In most cases that we see, it involves SAP's ERP or ECC product, as well as the business warehouse or BW system. But we work with other environments. I mentioned it. We work with any system in the business suite running on a NetWeaver ABAP. That could be a supply chain management, SCM system, or a CRM system. And we also have S/4HANA in our list of supported SAP environments, as well as B/4HANA. And more this is becoming part of customers' roadmap. Perhaps they've already implemented them and are in production with them. Then our tool, Xtract Universal, what it provides is 9 or 10 different connectivity options into your SAP environment. Every one of these components connects at the application layer. That's an important point to make here. We never connect directly at the database layer. Everything happens in the context of an SAP account and SAP user. This goes back to the requirement on the previous slide around auditability, security, right? You want to be visible to the SAP administrator. We want to be supported and certified by SAP. So every connection happens at the application layer in the context of an SAP user. And let's walk through these various components briefly. We can connect to tables or joins of multiple tables in any of these SAP environments. This is a very fast and efficient way to move data out, and many of our customers like using this type of component. We also have a data source component. This has the ability to connect to SAP's own data sources that are delivered with what SAP calls BI content. So if you are a company today that moves SAP data into a BW environment, you use SAP's own extractors and SAP's own data sources. We can also connect into these data sources with Xtract Universal and use SAP's own technology to provide a feed into a third-party environment. And that's very helpful, and it's very reliable also. And one of the big advantages of the data source component is that it enables reliable delta extraction. So think of a process where maybe you first start pulling a data set, let's say sales orders, and you pull a full data set across into your data warehouse, but then you don't want to do that over and over again. You only want to capture or extract the changed and new data since your previous extract. So the data source component is a very reliable and effective way to do that. The next 3 components are for BW environments. We can connect to info cubes as well as BEX queries. We can connect to SAP's Open Hub Services interface. That's an interface that was published by SAP a few years back, and it's really designed for mass unloading of data from a BW system. We can also connect to hierarchy objects. Common hierarchy objects in SAP include cost center hierarchies, for instance, geographical hierarchies, product hierarchies, and they're stored in SAP in a certain way. They're even stored in different ways between the ERP system and the BW system. With our tool, we can get to that data and bring that hierarchy information out so you can use it in your third-party data warehouse. We can also connect to any function or remote function module, as they're called, or BAPI in SAP. We also connect to SAP's own query. You might be using transaction SQ01 today in your ERP system. And we can also connect to your ABAP reports. Think of a user in the SAP GUI client running a report inside of SAP, that creates a certain output maybe a stock movement report or a travel expense report, what have you. And so we can also connect to these reports and bring them out into the third-party environment. Xtract Universal, once the data is extracted from SAP, allows you to control the load behavior into the destination. You can choose to insert the records into a table in the destination. You can also choose to update, basically overwrite existing records, merge records into an existing data set. You can choose to truncate a table and recreate it. So even though Xtract Universal is not a full ETL tool, it certainly gives you control over the load behavior in your target. And then what we're talking about here today is primarily two cloud environments. The most popular ones we've seen with our customers are Microsoft's Azure, a SQL Azure data warehouse and Azure databases, as well as Amazon, the Amazon Redshift environment. But Xtract Universal supports other non-cloud environments, and even though this is not what we're talking in this webcast, I do want to mention it. So for customers that have on-premise database environments like SQL Server, Teradata, Oracle, you can also write to those destinations with Xtract Universal. All of what you see here on this slide is built into Xtract Universal, comes with your Xtract Universal license. And that gives you, or gives customers also a lot of flexibility, really both in terms of what you can connect to, what your data source inside your SAP landscape is, but also where you want to store your data and where you ultimately want to bring that data into. So with that, let's go into a demo. Let me make sure you can see this. Okay. What you see on this screen is Xtract Universal. This is the designer component of Xtract Universal. Xtract Universal has a simple architecture. You have the designer, which you see here, and you have the runtime or the service, which runs in the background as a Windows service. The service does the work of extracting the data from SAP, bringing it out, doing the required transformations, and saving it in the target destination. In the designer, you can control your extracts and define your extracts that you want to execute. And here you can see a list of extracts that I have already defined in Xtract Universal. And an extract is mainly defined by three things. One is the source, and you see that in this column here, in the third column. And the source is always an SAP environment. You can have as many SAP source connections as you want. You can see, in my case, I have a BW system configured, another one that I called SAP BW. I have some ECC systems. So you can connect to any of your SAP systems. Could also be a sandbox or a non-production system, but it's always an SAP ABAP environment. The next thing that characterizes an extract is the type of extraction. And on the previous slide, you've seen the 10 different types of objects that we can connect to. And you can see here in the type column, I have extractions that work against BW cubes. I have some delta queues or data source connections. Here I'm pulling some hierarchy data. Here I have a connection to an SAP query, an ABAP report, some tables, and down here a join of table. And then the last thing when you create or define one of these extractions is you have to specify your destination. And again, here we have a number of different destinations. I'll go into more details in a minute. Xtract Universal supports more than 20 destination types at the moment, and that's a growing list of destinations that we support with the tool. So to start out, if let's say you wouldn't have already a list of, extractions defined like I do, you simply click on the New button to create a new extraction. You would start with the source, and here I have some SAP source systems already defined. If you don't have one, you start with the Add button here. And you can give your SAP system a name. All right, let's call this SAP. Let's call it SAP Production. Could also be a sandbox environment. And then you specify your connection parameters. This is very similar. It's almost identical, in fact, how a user would connect to SAP using SAP GUI. So you can specify your SAP environment. Right, in my case, I have a system exposed here on the internet that I can connect to, my SAP client, language, a username, and a password. Okay, I can test my connection, see if everything works. Okay, so that's good. We also do support single sign-on through a mechanism that is called SNC, Secure Network Communication, or an SAP logon ticket. Also, SAP has recently switched their connectivity library, which is called the RFC library, over to a new version that is now called the NetWeaver RFC library. So for some customers that want to use that, our tool still supports the classic or old RFC library, as well as the new one that SAP now recommends customers to use. So with that information, I can now select my source, give my extraction a name. Let's call this webinar demo. Okay, and then you select the type of extraction that you want to do, or the type of object you want to connect. A very simple one is a table. So let's start with that one, and I'll show you a second one in a minute. In the next step, you will then choose the specific table that you want to connect to. This is a step that requires a little bit of SAP knowledge. The designer of this extraction has to understand where the data is contained in SAP. But with a tool, we're trying to make this as simple as possible. So you can, for instance, search by description using wildcards. Let's say if I want to create vendor master data outside of SAP, I can search for this, and the tool will come back with a list of tables that have the description vendor master in them. So let's choose this one, table LFA1, general vendor master data. I will now get a list of fields in that table, and I can be selective in what I want to bring outside. Let's, in this case, choose, for instance, the vendor number, maybe the country key, name, city, and maybe the postal code. You can also apply a where clause that allows you to filter the data set. Maybe you don't want to bring all of your data over. And we also have, for each object type, specific extraction settings. And these are designed to really help you manage sometimes the large volume that you're bringing across with things like packaging your data extract into smaller chunks. So that actually helps you manage your memory consumption, both in SAP as well as on the receiving side. And in this case, we provide you with a function in SAP that compresses the data and is optimized for performant reading of table data. So these settings are very important. And now I have a new extract. It's down here, webinar demo. I specified ECC as my source. I have specified a table as my source object. And now the last thing I want to do is specify a destination. And so I mentioned Xtract Universal today has over 20 different destinations. Everything from data warehouse environments, both on-premise as well as in the cloud, to analytics systems like Tableau, Alteryx, Power BI, or Qlik, to some other destinations like flat file destinations, for instance. We also support OData Atom feeds. We can write directly into SharePoint lists. So again, this is a growing list of destinations that are supported. And what I have here for this webinar is a destination into an Azure Data Warehouse environment. And there's only a few parameters that you need, or that Xtract Universal needs, to connect to that data warehouse environment. It requires the server name, the SQL Server name in Azure. It requires the credentials in the form of a username and a password. And it requires the name of the database that you have configured, in this case in Azure, to write your data to. Let's see if this connection works. Try again. Okay, I didn't click all the way. Okay, let's try this one more time. No? Okay, let me go over to my Azure environment because it was working a few minutes ago. This is my Azure dashboard, and you can see here I have a SQL Server set up, and on that SQL Server I have a SQL Server database. So let me first go into my server. Okay, I can look at the firewall settings, and I should be okay here, right? You can see I have a rule defined here where I can open the firewall settings in Azure to allow me to connect. So that looks good here. So let me step back and look at my database. I called it SAP DW. Okay, everything looks okay here. Now let me go back to Xtract Universal, and let's try this one more time. Okay, see if it works now. Well, doesn't like it today for some reason. Let me switch over to Visual Studio real quick. Visual Studio is a client that I can also use to connect into my Azure database. So let me bring this up and see if I have more luck there. Okay, so here I have my Azure Explorer. I can look at my SQL Server databases in the cloud. There it is. And so let's do a refresh actually. And then open it in the SQL Server Management portal, sorry. Okay. Okay, network's not coming in right now. So I apologize for that. Something's going on with the network. You can see here in Xtract Universal that I've run this extraction before. Here's one called SAP Vendors. It has the same destination, Azure SQL, and it wrote 922 records directly into the table in SQL Azure. Similarly to SQL Azure, I can also specify Amazon Redshift as a destination. Okay, and the configuration is very similar. Amazon, I have the session open here. Here's my Amazon Redshift cluster. And what Amazon gives you is an ODBC connection. And the default port is 5439. So again, from your client environment, make sure that this port is opened. And then you can connect directly with a username and password into your Redshift database. Let me just check one more on this thing here. I'll give this one more try because it was working just a minute ago. I'll retype the password. Okay. Okay, doesn't like it today. So, one more look over here. Yeah, it seems to be a network issue. Okay, so I apologize for that, but I hope you still get the idea of how you can connect from Xtract Universal directly into your cloud database. Similarly, let's say if you were to extract data from a BW system, you can choose or set up a BW source. Let's take a look at the connection parameters here real quick. Okay, very similar. You have a name, a host or application, SAP application server, client, logon language, username and password. And then you define your extraction. Let's call this webinar demo 2. Okay. And let's say from this BW system, I want to connect to an InfoCube or maybe a BEX query. So this screen looks similar to what we saw for the table before, except that now the tool wants you to pick a specific InfoCube or BEX query. Let's look at what queries we have on our BW system. Let's pick that one. And then the tool will give you the metadata of this BEX query. In this case, we have key figures, and you can pull across what you want to bring in, what you want to bring into your data warehouse. Let's say open orders, quantity maybe, and net value. Let's do that one. And then you can also bring over your dimensions. Company code, let's say, distribution channel, material. You can also choose from specific properties. Let's do the material group here and the sold to. And similar to what we saw on the table, you have extraction settings that are designed to help with performance, with some are also functional settings, you know, like you can, instead of these cryptic technical names, you can include the more descriptive names for columns. and then these are performance related, where the tool allows you to optimize the extraction for memory and large data volume extraction. Okay, and now we have a webinar demo 2. Okay, let's actually sort by name. There we go. So we have our table extract, we have our Bex query extract, and similar to before, we would choose a destination. Just to show you how this runs, I'm going to use a local SQL DB that I have on my machine. And this is a SQL Express destination. And now I'm ready to run this. You can also schedule these extractions. Let's say you want to run this once every day or once a week. You can use a scheduling tool of your choice, for instance, the Windows Task Scheduler to do this. You can see now 215 records were extracted, and I'm going to run this one as well with the SQL DB destination. The tool also has built-in logging. This is very helpful for troubleshooting purposes. And so now if I go into my SQL Server Management Studio, okay, my SQL Express instance, I have a database called SAP DW, and I now have the two tables with the default name of the extraction, Webinar Demo and Webinar Demo 2. And as you recall, Webinar Demo, the first table was based on the vendor table in ECC, and the second demo was based on a sales Bex query in BW. So here's my data, and that is exactly how you would also see it in your Azure Data Warehouse. I'll make one more attempt here. Okay, same error. Okay, so that concludes the demo. Let me go back to my slide deck here. Okay. So this brings me to the end of our webinar. I want to open it up for questions here in a minute. But also, thank you for joining this webinar today. I hope you found it useful and informative. I would like to ask you to please complete the evaluation that you will see in the follow-up email. And also, if you're interested in giving Xtract Universal a try, simply go to our website. The URL is listed here. And then go to the downloads link at the very top of the site. This will give you a 30-day free trial. It comes with the full functionality of everything you saw in today's webcast, all the connectors into SAP, but also all of the destinations, all of the 20 plus destinations, including Amazon Redshift and SQL Server Azure. So give it a try, and it will also come with our support through this trial period. So with this, I will stop the recording now, and I'm going to open it up for questions.